list: back, elbow, hamstring. In 2015, the man broke his eye, and now he has got a sprained ankle that is severe enough he's missed 12 of the Cavaliers' 19 games. And hey, you can sit there and make all your jokes about him being made of glass or say that's why the Cavs could sign him for the vet minimum, but none of that takes into account
health is wealth.
damage.
It's a simple statement, yet it possesses so much power behind the true meaning of
it. Especially when you grew up without a reliable house, or you didn't always have hot food, or there were guns everywhere, and you got out because of what your body could do. And as you
having the ableness to be mentally and physically healthy is something that everyone in the world would like to have. But unfortunately, that's just not the case for each person. Some of the most interesting people amongst our society today are athletes. Athletes are fearless, passionate, controversial, and above all, they're human. Recently, there's a lot of awareness being raised for pro athletes and the mental struggles that they battle on a daily basis. We know most celebrities or athletes of a high profile are idolized for being at their best on big stages. But where's the support on or off of the court?
Demar, let's start off just talking about something bigger than basketball. You recently came out and kind of expressed your battles with mental health and depression, which is an issue across our country right now. What was the genesis of that, and what were you hoping to cause happen?
I think, have it be something that, I know a lot of people ashamed to talk about it. Even myself for a long period of time.
Injuries can cause enormous amounts of pain and affect a person in many ways unimaginable, especially to someone who may have not have had the same experience. The more serious kinds of injuries can not only affect you at the point of injury, but may have a negative effect in the long run as well.
It's all about helping others. It's not about you just being a selfish person about the things you're going through. Other people going through stuff as well. If you could share that and put that on the forefront, it may could help somebody, whether if it's one person or 100 or 1,000. I just finally got to that point to where, it's time for me to say something.
It takes a lot to be silent about the struggles that you may endure because everyone may not understand on the same level as you do. But it takes even more to speak out on those issues and address them head on as well.
To it,
This is Health is Wealth.
I played basketball right after Title IX. And so I played in college late 70s, early 80s. And so at the time, at one point there was a professional league for women, but by and large, nobody was looking to play beyond college. Most of us weren't really prepared physically like you see athletes today. I mean, we didn't play growing up other than just, in the neighborhood. We didn't have the training programs that you have today. And so I would say overall, the level of basketball at that point for women was a little lacking, and we just didn't have the background. And so, I don't recall really serious injuries. I don't know. We just didn't maybe put in the extra. I think, as a coach, what I learned was that, we typically saw injuries occur when the kids were tired.
Yeah.
They were really tired. And so if we had worked them hard, if it was late in the season, they were apt to maybe have that serious injury. The last year that Southeast was in Division II, we had a team that went to the Final Four. We actually went to the finals of NCAA Division II. We had a freshman who was a great outside shooter, and it was probably late February. We were having a good year. Late February, had a road game, came back, and I remember I was assistant coach. I remember talking to head coach, and he said, I almost canceled practice, but he didn't. And that day during practice, this freshman who was our outside threat I think she was just running down the court. I was not at practice. I was recruiting, and stepped wrong, blew out her knee. Yeah. And so, that ended the season. It didn't end her career. She came back, the following year and played. But you saw during that time frame, you saw a lot of women in basketball, at least, with the ACL tears. Yeah. And a lot of times, we did have athletes that it basically did end their career. Once they left the university, I really didn't follow them, so I don't know how that affected them in terms of emotionally. But, we had some, fight back. Today, with the techniques they have, in surgery and rehab, you see people come back and play and get back to those levels. Yeah, but at that particular time, you didn't see that as much. Yeah. I've seen my kids played sports. My son's a baseball player, or he was a baseball player, and an injury really kind of impacted his career. He had a labrum tear, and for a pitcher, it was up in the shoulder, and for a pitcher, that basically ends their career. He wasn't a pitcher; he was a first baseman, and he was first team all conference as a junior, and tore it during that season. Played on it, but then had surgery. And he came back, he played well, but then there were times, towards the late in the season where the shoulder just got so fatigued that, he just wasn't able to swing the bat, and that was his thing. Yeah, and so
against himself because of the injury, he probably didn't feel all the way comfortable.
Yeah, he couldn't. Nobody was really interested. The numbers his senior year just weren't good. He just couldn't get the bat around. Yeah. And he was a power guy. And so, it was a struggle. I know it was a struggle because, I wanted to support him. We were at the games. It was hard to see him not be able to play to his ability. And I know it was hard for him. My daughter's a Paralympian. I think I probably talked about that in class. And so an injury pretty much ended her career too. She competed in Beijing as a 16-year-old, got a bronze medal in her best event, and then went back in London as a 20-year-old, and that would have been probably one of her best times, age-wise, to compete. But her disability came from a tethered spinal cord, and what had happened is the cord had retethered, and she had some issues where she was losing strength in her legs, and it wasn't real apparent. Because that had been a problem all along, but basically with the swimming, she couldn't kick, and she didn't kick well because of that. But the retethering, she just kind of went downhill about the last several months before London. Didn't really know what was going on, and she got a bronze again in her best event, and got a couple medals and relays. But that was really, really difficult for her to overcome emotionally, and she basically retired. You put, with the Paralympics, similar to the Olympics, your big meets every 4 years, and you compete, and everything is centered on that goal 4 years from now. And you're putting in double practices a day and all kinds of yardage, and then you get to the event and you don't feel like you're able to compete. You know, you train for 4 years for 3 minutes. And it was devastating. You know, I've seen in the Paralympics, I've seen kind of the flip side to that. There was a swimmer. He swam at Navy and went into the service, lost his eyesight, disabling a bomb in Afghanistan. And so then obviously disabled, he came back and swam in the Paralympics. In his best stroke, won a gold medal. You know, there was a swimmer when my daughter first started. She was a little bit older, I think a 15-year-old. She was a swimmer at swim practice. Coach had them doing a drill that they shouldn't have been doing. They were diving off the blocks into shallow water, and he had a rope for them to dive over. Long story short, she landed on her head and broke her neck. But she was a very good Paralympian, swam for years, but a quadriplegic, you know, well, paraplegic, I guess. She had some usage of her arms. But, there were just a lot of guys and women in that group that took, you know, people that lost their legs. Another one, Melissa Stockwell, lost her leg in Baghdad, roadside bomb, came back and decided that she wanted to, you know, do something else. Got back, you know, she went to Beijing on the swim team. That wasn't her strongest event. Then she set out London, but she started doing triathlons, and that was something she really liked. And so she went. They started the triathlon for the Paralympics in Rio, and went there. She got a bronze. She's had a couple kids. She's on the list to go to Tokyo, but you know that's been postponed. So you know, there are a lot of those kinds of stories that I've seen with people who have had really significant injuries, but instead of quitting, you know, they look for another venue, another way to come back and do it again.
It's apparent that depending on how you deal with the injury after you have the injury, how you decide to cope with the injury can really affect you in the long run in terms of the future.
You know, when I first started teaching, I had a student who was coming back to finish his degree after a good period of time, and he played. Not sure if he ever played in the NFL or if that was just a hope. I think he made it a little while, but he had some serious injuries, and trainers wanted to shoot him up. And, you know, he was trying to hide the injury because I think he may have moved to the Canadian League, and he was trying to get back to the NFL. And, you know, told me about, you know, the pressure that he felt to, you know, mask the pain, which, you know, in a lot of cases is not good for your body. And then just the whole idea of trying to hide that injury because, you know, knowing if the coach knows, you won't get played or you won't get, you know, traded back to the team you want. So there's that whole aspect too. And I know that may be way beyond your scope of what you're doing with this, but it's very interesting.
Like you said, it's broad, it's super broad when you talk about injuries and mental health and stuff like that, because it could have so many effects, you know, just depending on what type of person or what circumstances going on. And there's a controversy, I guess, at this point. I didn't read the article, but I saw yesterday, I believe,